I kind of wish I didn't have to carry both of these. They take up a lot of space in my bag, and they're so similar. I can use a keyboard and trackpad with both of them. I can take video calls and send iMessages on both of them. I can check social media. I can sort through and share photos. Wait, why do I carry both of these? Can't I just use one? While the line between iPad and Mac has gotten fuzzy in recent years, I still don't think my iPad can replace my MacBook, at least not yet. Let's go over the major similarities and differences between these two and why Apple's making it hard for me to exclusively use the iPad. Whether or not the iPad can stand in for a Mac is a hot topic and has been for some time now. I love writing and drawing on my iPad and can't do anything like that on my MacBook Pro. However, I cannot stand editing video on my iPad. I need my MacBook Pro for that. So for me, my iPad can't replace my MacBook. CNET editor-at-large Scott Stein doesn't think the iPad can replace a Mac either. He does, however, think an iPad-Mac hybrid device could. In fact, he's been asking for iPadOS to become, quote, more computer-like, basically forever. And despite updates that have made the iPad more similar to a laptop, he still wants an iPad with macOS or something akin to it today. I agree with him. I love how the portability of my iPad allows me to chill on my couch and read more comfortably than I ever could on a Mac laptop. But I still go back to my MacBook Pro for the precision it offers when it comes to, say, file management. However, I think an iPad with macOS could bridge that gap and allow my iPad to replace my Mac. That being said, this is Apple we're talking about, and the company makes changes at its own pace. I mean, we are still waiting on a USB-C iPhone, even though iPads have had USB-C since 2018. And as much as I want an iPad-Mac merge, Apple has different feelings on the matter. In 2016, the company's Senior Vice President of Software Engineering, Craig Federighi, acknowledged the, quote, common technology shared beneath the iPad and Mac, but also said, to attempt to bend one into the other is at its root to make a compromise. Apple did say it would bring some iOS apps to Mac at WWDC in 2018, but Federighi still reinforced his 2016 stance on whether macOS and iOS would merge, saying,
So I'd like to take a moment to briefly address this question. No. Of course not.
That was a pretty emphatic no. But when it comes to Apple, we never really know. After all, Steve Jobs did bash 7-inch tablets back in 2010, saying they were, quote, too big to compete with a smartphone and too small to compete with an iPad. And then Apple introduced the 7.9-inch iPad mini just 2 years later. So who's to say there won't ever be a macOS iPadOS merge? In fact, despite what Apple's said in the past, we've seen more and more of an overlap between iPad and Mac in recent years. For example, Apple began offering trackpad support for iPad in 2020. It also unveiled the new Magic Keyboard case with a trackpad for iPad Pro models, and now the 4th and 5th gen iPad Air. I don't know about you, but when I think of a laptop, I think of a trackpad and a keyboard. So being able to use both of these things with an iPad rather than the semi-awkward combination of typing on a keyboard while still having to tap the screen to navigate definitely brought the iPad closer to a Mac. It makes the experience of typing out my silly little to-do list nearly identical whether I'm doing it on my iPad or my MacBook Pro. I could even use the same keyboard mouse setup for both devices if I really wanted to. I'm not sure if you know this, but earlier this year, Apple introduced its universal control feature. This lets you use one keyboard and mouse or trackpad with both your iPad and Mac. So the two devices can share a cursor, essentially morphing them. All I'm saying is the hardware interoperability is there. Just give me macOS on iPad. The latest iPad Pro has Apple's M2 chip, which is the same chip powering the latest MacBook Air and 13-inch MacBook Pro. The iPad experience is really going to parallel the Mac experience now that they share a processor. If only I could get Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro on my iPad next. iPadOS 16.1 brings Stage Manager to M1 and M2 iPads, and Stage Manager is also available on macOS Ventura. This tool allows for more Mac-esque multitasking by allowing you to overlap and resize windows. iPadOS 16.1 also offers external display support, which should work well with Stage Manager. I haven't tried this feature yet, but as a content creator, the idea of being able to use that second display to look at, say, my scripts while video editing seems like it will really push the iPad closer to being a true Mac replacement. With all of these similarities, Apple has to be close to bringing macOS to iPad, right? Apple Insider recently reported a rumor that macOS is being tried out on the M2 iPad Pro. This version of macOS is allegedly exclusive to the M2 iPad Pro and codenamed Mendocino. The rumor suggests the operating system will be introduced sometime next year. I am very skeptical about this rumor, but still kind of excited. But while we've seen the line between iPad and Mac get fuzzier and fuzzier, we have not seen the convergence that a true hybrid iPad Mac would require. As a content creator, that touchscreen Apple Pencil combo on my iPad Pro is a staple in my production process. I use it to design thumbnails and banner art for my personal YouTube channel. And when I was a student, using my iPad to take handwritten notes was essential in my study process. Certain apps are also just better optimized for iPad, like ones based around reading and annotating. The reading experience just isn't as intuitive or comfortable on a Mac. Yet, I still find myself going back to my MacBook for file management. For instance, I like to file those iPad thumbnails I create or notes I take on my MacBook Pro. My MacBook has more storage space and makes it easy to eventually move those files onto a hard drive. I also produce videos, and the precise video editing I like to do just isn't possible on an iPad yet, largely because the applications I use to edit, Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere, aren't available for iPad. And yes, I know Adobe Premiere Rush exists, but it is not the same as Classic Premiere Pro. Look, if you deal with text documents and spreadsheets, perhaps the iPad can replace your Mac. But for my purposes, I'm left needing both devices. And when they inevitably die, I can't say I'm stoked about having to repurchase both. It doesn't feel realistic for the average consumer to have to purchase two products with so many similarities. But I am still holding out hope that we'll get an iPad with macOS that would be able to replace my Mac. That would certainly be a game changer. So sound off in the comments. Can the iPad replace the MacBook for you, or does it still fall short? Also, we do these videos on everything Apple every week, so don't forget to subscribe to see more. And hey, if you're still watching this video, you probably liked it, so give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.